Episode 2. The Chair. I watch in the mirror as 18 inches of my hair falls into my lap. Just like that, gone. The hairdresser moves to the other side. More cutting, more hair falling. I can't stop the tears now. They're running down my face, landing on the pink cape, mixing with all that auburn hair scattered across my shoulders. This is really happening. There's no going back now. Previously on the transformation. Sarah's perfect New York life fell apart when she caught her boyfriend cheating. She lost everything: her job, her apartment, even her suitcase on the train south. Aunt Margaret took her in and transformed her style. Vintage dresses, girdles and stockings, hair in rollers every night. Then Sarah met David, a young minister with big ambitions. They fell for each other fast. But David needed Sarah to look the part for an important parish committee meeting. He asked her to cut her hair short with a tight perm, a classic ladies' style. Despite her fears, Sarah agreed. The appointment was set for Monday at noon. And now, it's Monday morning. I couldn't eat breakfast. My stomach was in knots as I sat at Aunt Margaret's kitchen table, staring at a piece of toast I couldn't bring myself to bite. She was already dressed for the day, her silver curls perfectly set, watching me with those knowing eyes. "You're sure about this?" she asked gently. "There's no shame in changing your mind, sweetheart." I ran my fingers through my hair, still long, still mine, for what felt like the 100th time that morning. "I'm sure," I said, though my voice shook. "David needs this, we need this." She nodded. "Then let's get you ready. The taxi will be here in an hour." Music, preparation montage, slightly ominous. Upstairs, I laid out my clothes carefully. This felt important, like I needed to dress the part for what was about to happen. I slipped into my long-line bra, the one that made my breasts stand out like pointed cones. Then the white open-bottom girdle, tight, restrictive, pulling everything in. Dark blue stockings attached to 6 garter straps. White blouse with a high collar. Navy pleated skirt that fell just below my knees. Flat black shoes. A silk scarf for my neck. I stood in front of the mirror, fully dressed except for one thing. My hair. Still long, still cascading down past my shoulders in loose waves. I picked up my brush and gave it one final brushing. Slow, deliberate strokes. The bristles glided through like silk. This was the last time I'd ever brush long hair. Aunt Margaret appeared in the doorway with her camera. "Before pictures," she said softly, "you'll want to remember." I stood in the backyard. Front view, my hair shining in the morning sun. Side view, you could see how it fell halfway down my back. Back view, all that auburn hair, thick and beautiful. The woman in those photos looked young, uncertain, but still recognizably me. The taxi was here. The drive felt both too long and too short. David sat beside me in the taxi. He'd taken the morning off to come with me. For moral support, he said. But I could see the excitement in his eyes. We drove through the small downtown, past the general store and the church, down a side street I'd never noticed before. The taxi stopped in front of a row of small shops. Betty's Beauty Parlor. From the outside, it looked tired. Faded paint around the window, thick net curtains covering the glass, a small sign barely visible. "This is it?" I asked. Aunt Margaret had already gotten out. "Best traditional hairdresser in 3 counties. Mrs. Hood's been doing this for 40 years. David took my hand. "You ready?" No, I wasn't ready, but I nodded anyway. The smell hit me like a wall. Perm solution, hairspray. That chemical, old-fashioned salon smell that probably soaked into the walls decades ago. The salon was small. A single styling chair sat in the center, old-fashioned, heavy, with a round metal base. Behind it, a stained white sink. On either side, hood dryers that looked like they were from the 1960s. And in the chair sat an elderly woman, her white hair being sprayed into perfect, tight curls by the hairdresser. Mrs. Hood. She was tall, almost imposing, maybe late 60s, with iron gray hair permed into tight waves. She wore a pink nylon smock and had the kind of stern face that made you want to sit up straight. She glanced at me, then continued spraying her client's hair with thick, old-fashioned lacquer from a plastic bottle. "Hang your jacket over there," she said, not looking at me. "Sit down, I'll be with you shortly." Her voice was commanding, not mean but authoritative, like a school teacher who didn't tolerate nonsense. I did exactly as I was told. David and Aunt Margaret sat on the wooden chairs against the wall. I sat between them, gripping my purse, trying to breathe normally. The elderly woman in the chair was getting up now, patting her shellacked curls carefully. They didn't move at all, solid as a helmet. Her haircut was severe, very short, barely covering her ears. The back was cleanly shaved, creating a stark white line where her hair ended and bare skin began. "Oh my God, that's so short." David leaned over. "That's perfect, though. That's exactly the kind of style you need." My stomach dropped. Mrs. Hood was shaking out a faded pink cape now, the same one the elderly woman had just worn. "Come along now," she said briskly. "Let's begin." I stood on shaking legs and walked to the chair. Up close, it looked even older. The leather was cracked. The metal base was worn smooth from decades of women's feet resting on it. How many women had sat here and watched their hair fall? "Arms in," Mrs. Hood instructed. I slipped my arms into the cape. It smelled faintly of chemicals and old fabric softener. She gathered my hair up and fastened the cape tight around my neck. Then she let my hair fall. It cascaded down the back of the chair, catching the light. Still mine, still beautiful. Not for long. "Zip." I sat, placed my feet on the metal rest, gripped the armrests. In the mirror, I looked terrified. Mrs. Hood turned to Aunt Margaret. "Remind me what we're doing." "A traditional bubble cut. Take off as much as possible, leaving just enough for a very tight perm. She needs it back off her face and a nice, clean-shaved neckline." The words hung in the air. Take off as much as possible. Mrs. Hood picked up a brush and started brushing my hair. Not gently, she hit tangles and just pulled through them. My hair fell forward, covering my face like a curtain. Then I felt cold steel against my forehead. Suddenly, my left eye was clear. I could see again. An 18-inch section of my hair lay in my lap. She moved to the right side. SCHNIP, SCHNIP, SCHNIP. My face was fully exposed now. I had a straight, high fringe. "Head still," she commanded. She was working on top now, combing up sections, cutting them off. Each piece was about a foot long, falling onto my shoulders, sliding down the cape into my lap. My ears were next. The scissors moved fast around my left ear, chunk after chunk falling. My ear suddenly felt cold, completely exposed. I couldn't stop the tears anymore. They rolled down my cheeks silently, falling onto the cape. Mrs. Hood noticed but didn't slow down. If anything, she worked faster. Right side, same treatment, both ears now completely visible. Then my head was pushed forward roughly. My chin hit my chest. She was hacking into the back now. No careful snips, just fast, brutal cutting. I could feel the weight disappearing. Feel the hair sliding down my back inside the cape. "There, that's you roughed out." She came around with a small brush and swept all the cut hair off me onto the floor. The pile was massive, 2 feet of auburn hair scattered around the chair in a perfect circle. I stared at myself in the mirror. What was left of my hair stuck out in uneven tufts about 2 inches long. I looked like someone had attacked me with kitchen scissors. Mrs. Hood handed me a tissue. Her voice was slightly softer now. "Dry your eyes. That's the worst part over. You're not the first young woman to cry in that chair after losing all that hair. Years ago, it was something most girls went through, the move from girlhood to becoming a proper lady." She wrapped a gray towel around my neck. "Let's get you washed." The wash was vigorous. Her strong hands massaged the shampoo in roughly, scrubbing my scalp like she was cleaning a pot. Back in the chair, she combed out my hair. Wet, it looked even shorter, flat against my head, barely 1.5 inches long. "Now," she said, picking up the scissors again, We'll refine the length. Wait, more cutting. She worked methodically now, combing up sections, cutting them to exactly 1.5 inches. The hair looked so short already. How could there be more to cut? But there was, more pieces falling into my lap with each snip. Finally, she seemed satisfied. Then she pushed my head forward again. Electric clippers. My heart rate spiked. I could see them in the mirror, chrome blades, no guard, hanging from a hook. She pressed them to the base of my neck. The cold metal vibrated against my skin. I felt them rise up, up, up. How high was she going? The note changed as they hit hair. The pressure increased. Then they were gone. But they came right back, again and again, clipper pass after clipper pass. When she finally turned them off and hung them back up, I quickly felt my neck. Oh God. My hair ended in a straight line an inch below where my neck met my skull. But beneath that line, tiny, sharp bristles, she'd undercut everything. My neck felt cold, exposed, vulnerable. Then she picked up a straight razor. She scraped it over my freshly clipped neck. The sound made me shudder. When she finished, I reached back again. Completely smooth, bare skin, like I'd never had hair there at all. There, nothing looks better than a nice clean neckline. She disappeared into a back room. David got up and walked over. He ran his fingers up my shaved neck and I shivered, from the cold, from the sensation, from everything. It's going to be perfect, he whispered. Thank you for doing this. Mrs. Hood returned with a trolley. On top, dozens of tiny pink perm rods. Music, ominous processing. This lotion's getting hard to find nowadays, she said, opening a bottle. The smell of rotten eggs filled the air. Everyone wants those soft, natural perms, but for traditional extra-firm perming, this is what works. She started winding at my forehead with the smallest rod I'd ever seen. It was recessed in the center, designed to create an even tighter curl. The rod pulled at my scalp immediately, tight, uncomfortable. She worked fast, years of practice. Row after row of tiny rods, each one pulling, creating a grid of tension across my entire head. Within 20 minutes, my head was covered in these tiny pink rods, all pulling in different directions. Cotton wool went around my hairline. Then she soaked every rod with the perm solution. At first it felt cold, then it started burning. Sound, hood dryer lowering. Under the dryer with you. I sat under the vintage dome dryer. The heat made the chemicals work faster and burn more. My scalp felt like it was on fire. The smell was overwhelming. I watched Mrs. Hood sweep up my hair, 3 big handfuls. She dumped them all in the trash. 2 feet of beautiful auburn hair, gone forever. After what felt like an eternity, she turned off the dryer and led me back to the sink. Sound, water spraying relief. The cool water was heaven. She rinsed and rinsed, then applied neutralizer, ice cold, making me shudder. She started removing the rods. I still hadn't seen what my hair looked like curled. Back in the chair one more time. She turned me to face the window while she blow-dried. You can look now. She spun the chair around. Oh my God. My hair was tiny. Tight, springy curls covered my head like a poodle's coat. They were so small and dense I could see my scalp between them. The curls barely reached the tops of my ears, and those ears were completely exposed, framed by the tapered, clipped sides. My forehead was fully visible. No fringe, just tight curls starting at my hairline and curling back. And my neck, so much bare, white neck. The shaved neckline was stark and precise, creating a hard line where my hair stopped. I looked severe, older, like someone's conservative grandmother. Perfect, Mrs. Hood said. Now let's set you properly. She picked up even smaller mesh rollers, covered in spikes, and wound my already tiny curls onto them. Setting lotion made my hair drip. Back under the dryer. When she finally took the rollers out and teased the curls with a tail comb, I looked even more old-fashioned. The tight curls had been formed into waves that went over the top of my head like a 1920s style. 2 heavy coats of lacquer sealed everything in place. There, much better. She held up the back mirror. The back was even more dramatic than the front. A tapered bowl-cut shape with my ears fully exposed. Below the curls, nothing but smooth, shaved skin. I barely recognized myself. Mrs. Hood untied the cape. You'll need regular appointments for shampoo, set, and neck shave. Every 2 weeks should do it. I stood up on shaky legs. The floor was still covered with my hair, that massive circular pile of auburn waves. Aunt Margaret was smiling. You look lovely, dear, a real lady now. I looked at David. His face was. He looked awestruck, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He walked over slowly and ran his fingers up my shaved neck again. The sensation made me shudder. It was electric, strange, intimate. Perfect, he whispered. You're absolutely perfect. Promise me you'll never grow it back. And standing there in that small-town Tennessee salon, surrounded by my severed hair, looking in the mirror at this severe, old-fashioned version of myself. I promised. We paid Mrs. Hood and left the salon. The cold air hit my exposed ears and neck like a slap. I'd never felt wind on my neck before, never felt my ears completely bare. I reached up to touch my hair, but there was barely anything to touch, just rock-hard lacquered waves that didn't move at all. David held my hand as we walked back to the car. He couldn't stop looking at me, couldn't stop touching my neck. That night, he told me I looked like everything he'd ever wanted, that I was his perfect lady now. And you know what? Despite the shock, despite how extreme the cut was, despite looking in the mirror and barely recognizing myself, I felt proud. I'd done this for him, for us, and he was so happy. The parish committee meeting went well. They loved our traditional values and classic presentation. But ultimately, they gave the position to someone with more experience. David was disappointed but not crushed, and he assured me my haircut wasn't for nothing. It was a sign of my commitment to him, to our future. I got used to the short curls, even started to like them. Over the next 4 months, my hair grew out. The curls loosened. My neck wasn't shaved anymore, just had short stubble, then actual hair again. I started to look more like myself. That's when David asked me to cut it again. But this time, he wanted it even shorter. Just a little shorter around the ears, he said. And maybe we could find a salon that really specializes in traditional styles. I knew what that meant. And I knew exactly which salon he was thinking of. I thought Mrs. Hood's cut was extreme. I had no idea how much shorter could actually be. Or what happens when a hairdresser decides a young woman needs to be properly cut. Find out in episode 3, even shorter. What did you think of Sarah's transformation? Was it too extreme, or exactly what she needed? Hit that like button if you're invested in this story and drop a comment. Would you cut your hair for someone you love? How short would you go? Have you ever made a sacrifice like this? Some of you are probably thinking David's being controlling. Others might think Sarah's making her own choices. I want to hear both perspectives in the comments. Subscribe and turn on notifications because episode 3 gets even more intense. Sarah's going back to the salon, but this time to a hairdresser who believes young women need to be put in their place. And trust me, you won't believe how short her hair ends up. New episode drops in 7 days. See you then.